Hello everyone, Elvis X here from the Imparts Gaming Community. I am bringing you my thoughts, impressions, and my review of BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. A game I have been most hyped for numerous reasons. Firstly, the dub is back! Yay! The fact that we didn't have a dub in the last game in the first place was kind of stupid, but that's neither here nor there. But, biases aside, let's begin. If you're unfamiliar with BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, it essentially is a mashup of a bunch of different fighting game and animated franchises. It's got BlazBlue, Persona 4 Arena, Under Night and Birth, and Ruby. Yes, that's Ruby, the Rooster Teeth franchise that everybody knows and, well, I'd say love, but story for a different day. Anyway, gameplay in this is a 2v2 tag-based fighting game in the vein of Marvel vs. Capcom 1. And I gotta be honest, I prefer that over the 3v3 fighting game hecticness of, say, Fighter Z or MVC3. That's just my personal preference, though. Anyway, it's a 5-button layout. You have 3 attack buttons, A, B, and C, which is light, medium, and heavy, plus a tag button to tag in your partner, and an assist button. Overall, I gotta be honest, they've been claiming that this is the most accessible Arc System fighter to date, and I completely agree with them. That doesn't mean, though, that because it's accessible, that veterans can't enjoy it either. There's plenty of depth to be had here with the tag combos, as well as the resonance blazes. I got this. And you also have cross assists. There's a lot to consider here. And don't worry, if you're a fan of BlazBlue, Persona, and Under Night, you'll feel right at home the second you pick up one of those characters. The distortion finishes are also present, as well as the astral finishes, so everything should feel really familiar to you if you're a massive fan of any of these franchises. Now, as far as game modes in the game, this is where I feel they did drop the ball just a little bit. You have the episode mode and or story mode, which don't worry, I won't spoil anything about that until the very end. I have my own discussion on that. That way you can just back out if you're not interested. Afterwards, you have your typical versus mode, your training mode, your tutorial mode, which teaches you the basics of the game, a combo challenge mode, and a mission mode, where you do certain tasks. My issue with the tutorial mode is it teaches you the bare basics, like I said, but it doesn't teach you how to do any tag combos. Every combo in the combo challenge and tutorial is just for a single character. It doesn't teach you how to use a tag assist during a combo and to keep the chain going for long periods of time. You have to figure that stuff out on your own. Anyway, after that, you've got a gallery mode, which is self-explanatory, view artwork from across the 4 franchises, a replay theater mode, and survival mode. And that's it. In offline game modes, that's it. No arcade mode, which is, again, just what? No time attack from the other BlazBlue games, no unlimited Mars mode, nothing. Which, with it being a crossover of all these franchises, I assumed that they would try implementing game modes across everything. You know, like the Golden Arena mode from Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. It just feels a little lackluster in terms of single player. As far as the online components work, this is where I have to say the game functions a little better than Fighter Z in my opinion. Firstly, it does run on that lobby system where you have to use a chibi avatar and run around and find kiosks to fight people. That's a little different than Fighter Z. What you and a player do is you both walk up to a kiosk and press X, and you can fight each other infinitely, essentially, as long as you both stay at that kiosk. Kind of like an arcade, you know how they were back in the day. Now, what makes the game better than Fighter Z, in my opinion, with its online, is it actually has a room system where you can create a lobby and your friends can just click on it and join. You don't have to go through an elaborate system to where both of you have to sign on to the game, both join the same massive room, and your avatars have to meet up in an arena. I just thought that was really cumbersome. I will say, though, BlazBlue Tag Battle does not feature a simple invite system. What I mean by that is, if you host a lobby, or just a private room for you and your friends, they still have to click on Search for Room and click on your specific PSN ID. Why is this such a fucking novelty? Excuse my language, but when did it become apparent to not include a simple invite system in these fighting games? It's the same issue with Fighter Z and Guilty Gear Xrd Rev 2. What happened to just simply clicking on invite friend and sending your friend an invite so they can join easily? So this is better than Fighter Z because it's easier to connect with a friend, but it's still not as convenient as it could be.
You're just wasting your time.
Anyway, now that that's over with, the online servers actually function really well. I've played close to a couple of hundred matches in this game, and I've experienced very little lag. And what lag I did experience was only on the intros. So during gameplay, it seemed to work perfectly. During gameplay, this works fine. Moving on from that, though, we have graphics and sound. Graphics in this game are... yeah, they're a bit of a mixed bag for me. Personally, I think the backdrops, as in the arenas and everything, look really, really well done. However, the same can't be said for some of the character models. See, here's the issue. The ones from Ruby were specifically designed from the ground up for this game, so they actually look really, really good and amazing. Especially if you're a fan of the show like myself, you'll notice they paid close attention to detail on what the characters look like and how they animate. Now, for the other three franchises, they didn't get the same treatment, so they're just recycled. For BlazBlue and Under Night and Birth, they have PS4 counterparts to recycle from, so they look a little dated, but not too bad. The same cannot be said for the Persona 4 Arena cast. Those characters... yeah, because the sprites were dumped in from a last-gen PS3/360 game, they're pretty rough in comparison. You won't notice right away unless you make them stand side by side with one of the Ruby characters. It's still a thing to note, though. But overall, though, I gotta say, the presentation is fine. Other than the sprite nitpicks that I just mentioned, it won't make or break the game, I don't think.
You scared?
As far as sound, this game, like I said earlier, has the English dub. Everybody from BlazBlue, Persona, and Ruby all return, and the Under Night voice cast is made up of some of the really good veterans of today, such as Keith Silverstein, as I like to call him. You might know him as the voice of Hunk from Resident Evil, or as Oslamel from Soul Calibur if you'd prefer. Not to mention, Under Night is also comprised of a bunch of other veterans. But, yeah, that aside, if you're a fan of the Japanese dub, I believe all of them did also reprise their roles, and from what little I have heard, they still sound great. So no matter your preference, me personally obviously preferring the dub, I think you're satisfied. You should be good here. The game also includes a feature to where you can choose what franchise is in dub and which one isn't. You like the Ruby sub better? Well, there you go. Prefer Under Night characters to be in sub but BlazBlue in English? Well, you can do that. It's a feature I don't know how many people will take advantage of, but it's nice to have nonetheless. Right. Now, we've covered most of the things except for a few other minor issues. Firstly, the DLC. Everyone's heard of the downloadable content debacle and how there was 20 DLC characters featuring half the damn roster. Okay. The issue with this is simple. Half the cast is already on the disc. And I mean that. The first 10 DLC characters, give or take, are already playable in story mode. You can't play as them, you fight them, and they're already fully dubbed and all of their sprites are fully animated and everything. So the fact that they weren't available day one is a bit baffling. And then when they did become available 2 weeks later, they were locked behind a paywall. I can understand that pissing off a lot of people. Granted, the season pass is only $20 for 18 characters. More on that in a second. It's still a little baffling they would do the on-disc DLC mistake that Capcom made with Street Fighter Cross Tekken nearly a decade ago. Speaking of roster, this is another minor issue of mine. You'll notice if you look at the select screen that the BlazBlue cast eats up the full majority of it. Obviously, you might think, because BlazBlue is in the title. This is where I have an issue, though. BlazBlue, if you count every DLC character, has 16 characters. Persona and Under Night only have 10, and then Ruby only has 4. Only Team Ruby made it into this game. And with this game trying to massively appeal to the West, that's a huge misstep. I feel the Ruby fans are going to feel a little alienated just by looking at the roster and seeing that none of their other faves made it into the game. No Crow, no one from Team Juniper, no Cinder. It just feels off to me. It makes the game almost feel like it's BlazBlue featuring these other guest characters. That's just my opinion, though. I hope I'm wrong in that in the future, maybe with Season Pass 2, they include other characters from Persona, Under Night, and Ruby to even out the roster a bit more. But it's clear BlazBlue had the most bias here in the beginning. Speaking of which, the DLC roster, it's also been rumored that Senran Kagura characters will be coming in the future, which would be a nice touch, but I'm getting a bit off topic here. Personally, I bought the Season Pass, but that's just me. I wanted to support this game as much as I could. So, before I get into the story mode, and my nitpicks and issues and my thoughts on it, I will say I'll give this game a 7.5 to an 8 out of 10. It's an awesome Dream Match game, and personally, it could have turned out a lot worse despite all my nitpicks and complaining. I do feel the single-player modes could have been more robust. Again, not having an arcade mode, that's the mistake Street Fighter V made, and everyone berated the game for it. That was a dumbass mistake. But who knows? It's clear that this game was rushed in a lot of areas to meet EVO expectations, and I hope in the future they'll learn not to do that. But if you're a fan of any of these 4 franchises, I'd say give this game a shot. Now, on to the spoiler-heavy stuff with the story mode. If you're not interested in spoilers, I guess back out now and leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts on the game and if you agree or not. Alright, the story mode essentially follows the 4 franchises being collided into one world known as the Phantom Field by someone known as an observer. If you're familiar with BlazBlue, you'll understand the lore there. The problem is that if you're not familiar with BlazBlue, you won't know what the hell the observer is, or understand its main motivations. And the Phantom Field is a world that's referenced in the BlazBlue series, particularly the X-Blaze prequel visual novels. So I don't understand what they were trying to do with that. Speaking of which, this game boasts that you can pick whichever episode you want to start with. You know, such as BlazBlue, Persona, Under Night, and Ruby. That way, you can experience whatever franchise you're a fan of. This is both true and not true. Truth of the matter is, you can't experience the story modes in what order you want. Not right out of the gate. You are forced to complete BlazBlue's story mode at least once before you are allowed to pick Persona, Under Night, and or Ruby. I feel that that was not a good idea. I understand why they did it with what the antagonist is, being an observer steeped in BlazBlue lore. However, if fans just want to get on and play as Ruby or visit with the investigation team in Persona one more time, then they're gonna have to sit through a couple of hours of baiting the BlazBlue story first, and I feel that some of them might not be interested in that, because they're not interested in BlazBlue. Speaking of which, once again, BlazBlue takes the biasism in this story mode, being as how it is the only story episode with multiple endings and dialogue options to help change the ending and outcome slightly. Persona does not have this, which again, what? You mean to tell me the series that's in this game, featured from a Japanese role-playing game, doesn't have dialogue options to give you alternate endings? And neither does Under Night and Ruby, obviously. But still, BlazBlue is the only one? Not to mention, once you complete every episode, you unlock the option for the true ending path, which, you guessed it, is only accessible through the BlazBlue episode. What the fuck? Look, man, I love BlazBlue. Anyone who knows me knows that it's one of my favorite franchises, but I'm also a massive fan of the other three. I recently got big into Under Night and have been a fan of Ruby and Persona for ages. It would have been nice for the antagonists to be steeped in lore from all four franchises. They could have made them an observer, yes, but an observer who might have also awakened to a persona or been a shadow, and maybe also had in-birth powers and semblance from Ruby. That way it at least felt like all four franchises were connected here somehow. But no, BlazBlue of course had to take the main spotlight. I don't understand. I know I'm ranting here. Again, I do love this game, don't get me wrong, like I stated earlier, but there's a lot of problems here that need to be addressed that I don't think people are commenting on enough. Speaking of the episode mode, it's called Episode BlazBlue, Episode Ruby, etc. for whatever franchise. Here's the problem with this. You only play as the main character throughout the entirety of it. For example, if you're playing Episode BlazBlue, you only see it from Ragna's perspective. If you're playing Episode Persona, it's only from Yunarikami's, etc., etc. If you wanted to see it from Yosuke's perspective or Chie's, you don't get any of that. So it's only from the protag's point of view. That's a minor issue, I suppose, but I know some people might be disappointed if they don't get to play the game through as their waifu, or if their own waifu or maid character doesn't get the spotlight on them.
Aren't you fighting?
I will say some of the interactions in the story mode are absolutely hilarious. The problem is if you're not a fan of all the franchises, you might not understand what they're talking about. For example, Ragna interacts with Gordo from Under Night, and they both discuss the series lore from the worlds they're a part of. Gordo brings up in-births, voids, and the Hollow Knight, which I don't think a BlazBlue fan would get right away, while Ragna blames... wow. While Ragna brings up things such as Ars Magus, magic, and everything else from BlazBlue. It's kind of a mess. This story mode doesn't recap anything for you, which is why I find it a bit ironic they're claiming this is the most accessible fighting game for Arc System fans, yet at the same time it really isn't, because you have to be caught up on the lore of everything to enjoy all of the references the story throws at you. I feel like that's kind of the biggest issue. It's accessible in terms of gameplay, but in terms of story content, it really isn't. I know I'm ranting a lot here, guys, and I do apologize, but it is a minor pet peeve. Anyway, long story short, the story is really good if you're a fan of the franchises. Granted, each story episode is not independent, it's essentially a retelling of the other. However, they make it different enough to where it doesn't feel samey 100%. For example, if you play through the BlazBlue story and then tackle the Ruby story, you'll feel a difference enough to where you're not going to think that it's completely 100% the same, even though it is just a retelling of the same arc. I prefer the other style where it would have been a long, overarching story, but that's just me. Anywho, I guess that's mostly what I have to claim on the subject. I really feel like this game could have been a lot better. Again, it's really good, hence the 7.5 and 8 out of 10. But it should have been great. This should have been a game that is celebrated amongst anime fans and fighting game fans for years to come. A combination of Eastern and Western cultures with Japanese anime like Persona, BlazBlue, and Under Night, with Western animation like Ruby. Especially with them saying they want to add other franchises in the future. Like, they even claim they want to bring Avatar: The Last Airbender in here at one point and hinted at Fate Stay Night. That would be awesome. The problem is the way they're presenting it in a lot of the areas is a bit off.
Aren't you fighting?
Either way, though, if you want to pick this game up, I'd still say go for it. I think you will have a hell of a time. And even if you aren't 100% caught up on the story, I still think you'll get some enjoyment out of it, if you are a fan of at least one or two of the franchises. I am Elvis X from the Empire's Gaming community, and please leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts on the game. And yeah, let me know if you agree with me, or if you disagree with me on any of my points.
Aren't you fighting?
And hopefully, they will continue dubbing these games from this point forward, because seriously, I'm still pissed about Central Fiction. But we'll see where this goes. And cheers to Guilty Gear eventually making it into this game. The fact that it didn't right away is a bit sad, but I guess they need to draw for whatever sequel they cook up. But until next time, guys, I'll see you in whatever project we cook up next. Till then.